Well, we're still in the book of Exodus, and we're having Moses deal with Pharaoh. Remember, Pharaoh and king are interchangeable. That's the king of Egypt, better known as the Pharaoh, interchangeably used during this section of Scripture. And the whole point is God has said that Moses needed to go back to Egypt to ask the Pharaoh to let his people go. God warned Moses that Pharaoh's heart would be hardened and that he wouldn't allow him to go even when Moses would perform miracles and signs for the Pharaoh. Sometimes Moses remembered that and sometimes he didn't, that God had already warned him that Moses wasn't going to let the people go until he had demonstrated that he was Lord. And that was going to take some time. So we know that God had a purpose. We know that the people certainly couldn't understand it. Initially, their work got harder. But yet God was working his purpose, and he was demonstrating not only to the people of Egypt, not only to Pharaoh, but also to the people of Israel, that he was Lord, and that he controlled all of these things, and that he did these signs. Now, we've seen several signs already. We saw the rod thrown down that became a snake and then ate the magician's duplication of snakes. We saw the Nile blood, and we saw the magicians duplicate the Nile blood. We saw the frogs, and we saw the magicians duplicate the frogs. And today, as we look at this chapter 7 and 8, as we look at chapter 8 in particularly, we see that the next sign that God does is that he creates gnats that are just incredibly numerous and on everybody and just terribly distracting. We see the gnats done away with, and we see that the next thing that comes are flies. And these are also numerous, to a place where crops are going to waste. And Pharaoh calls for Moses once again, because, you see, even the magicians this time could not duplicate what Moses and Aaron had done. And they tell the Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. This is something that we can't duplicate. And the Pharaoh says that he's going to let the people go if Moses will just make a supplication for him and ask God to take the flies away. But after Moses takes the flies away, we find in verse 32 of chapter 8 that Pharaoh reneges again on his promise to let the people go and worship. Well, we've talked about the fact that every story in the Bible, every situation in the Bible is there to teach us and to apply to our lives. And yesterday we looked at Friday in this case, we looked at the fact that you should never deal with people of no integrity. As a matter of fact, if you can possibly not deal with anybody that is not also of the faith, you'd be better off. But obviously Pharaoh was not a man of integrity. And Moses has to deal with Pharaoh. And we see again the lack of integrity by Pharaoh. We also find that as Moses is negotiating back and forth with Pharaoh, that Pharaoh tries to get Moses to compromise. Where does that happen? Well, if you read this chapter carefully, you'll find that God from the very beginning has said that they've got to go out 3 days' journey to make sacrifice and worship him. And the Pharaoh wants Moses to tell the people just to go out a little ways so he can keep an eye on them. He's asked to compromise. Compromise sometimes is very good. but not when you're compromising with sin and God's commands. Today, as I spoke before the pastors of the Polk Association, one of the problems that we have in our denomination right now is that we have compromised. We've allowed modern spirituality, we've allowed post-modern theology and beliefs to creep into our denomination, to a place where our doctrine has been watered down and our compromises have made us too much like those that don't believe. As a matter of fact, a survey was taken that showed that nearly half of America doesn't believe that the church adds anything to America. Half of America doesn't believe the church adds anything to America. We've become so watered down and so compromising on issues like abortion, homosexuality, inerrancy of Scripture, and so many other areas that the effects of the church are not there anymore. They're not an influence on our society, and even believers have fallen into the trap that feel that the church is not necessary anymore. My friends, we've got to get back to what the Bible teaches. We've got to stand fast with no compromise. You don't compromise the things of God. If your child were to come to you and you were to tell him to go to bed because it was getting late and school was the next day, and you compromised and allowed him to stay up an extra 15 minutes, you know very well the next night he'd want you to compromise for half an hour and then an hour. And if you did enough compromising, before long, you'd find that you had a rebellious child who didn't go to bed except when he felt like it. We need to be careful then, as we look at this lesson, to recognize that Pharaoh tried to get Moses to compromise. And we that are following God's direction cannot compromise on the things that God commands us. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.